Kyle Legaspi mastered the art of portraits, landing her a successful career and a plethora of exhibits under her name. She is the living impersonation of what it was to pursue passion in a culture where art is perceived mainly as a hobby. So, how does a pre med graduate and a corporate analyst found her way back to where her heart calls home? Join us today as we talk more about her art journey, how to get your work into galleries, the Kickstarter step to drawing faces, why BTS or behind the scenes of your work is a must have on your socials, and the definition of edge control and watercolor. If you want to be part of the conversation, then send in your questions and topics you want us to cover to hello@etcherlab.com. Hey, this is Jessie from Etcher. We believe in your power to create, so we invited artists from all around the globe to inspire you to keep on creating. Join us in this journey and let's celebrate creativity. This is Make More Art, the podcast.
Okay, so when I was a kid, I've always been painting and drawing, and I've been representing my school, which is Miriam College High School, in different art contests. But as any Asian kid, your parents have planned your future for you, and they wanted me to be a doctor so I could take care of my family. So when I went to college, I went to a pre-med course. My pre-med course was nursing. On my second year in nursing or pre-med, I've already wanted to quit and go back to drawing. But of course, for my parents, I finished the whole course and even got my license in nursing. But afterwards, I never practiced my nursing degree. So I tried joining different exhibits. I joined 2 exhibits after graduating from college, but it was very difficult to shift your career from nursing or something health or medical related to art. Because if you try applying for any art related job here in the Philippines, they would always require you to have a degree or a formal education in art. So I landed a job as a business data analyst. And a couple of months after getting promoted, I realized, if I put the same effort that I'm putting here in my work, learning formulas and SQL codes, and maybe I can make it into the art world. So I think 3 or 4 months after getting promoted, I actually quit my job. I got married. Then I spent the next 2 years learning watercolor. I did watercolor because when growing up, I wanted to be a comic book artist. And there's this comic book artist named David Mack who does really good watercolor illustrations. I started with the face because if you study comics, if you get any comic book or any comic-related book, you always start with the head. So I started painting head drawings or portraits, and then I started posting them on social media. And then people started noticing my artworks, and then I got my first commission jobs because of those head drawings. And then after that, I just got into, for some weird reason, I just got into portrait commissions. And then I kind of stopped studying or learning comics already. So I wasn't able to get to the figure. So I stopped and got stuck in the head and became a portrait commission artist. Okay. And after which, I joined the Philippine Guild of Watercolorists. There I learned how to do gallery works. I met a lot of artists, framers, and got into art professionally. So in 2018, when I joined the Philippine Guild of Watercolorists, I already registered my name as a professional artist. And I started doing portrait commissions professionally.
Wow. I kind of resonate with, of course, in Asian countries, if you are into arts, your parents would normally tell you that, okay, I will support you, but that's just a hobby. It's not something like you cannot build a career out of it.
And kudos to those parents who have supported their children in terms of providing for like materials and supplies, because it can be expensive as well.
Yes.
But what's interesting about your journey is that, wow, medical field, that is so like on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yes.
But
That's why it
yeah.
was very difficult to shift
Uh-huh.
from nursing to being a professional artist.
How that decision making, Kyle, take me through that. Because for someone who has always been fascinated with art, even as a kid, when you made that shift to go to the medical field, because that's what your parents wanted, how did that make you feel? Did you continue painting? I mean, do you paint on a daily basis? Do you still allot time to create, or you totally shifted your focus to finishing your course because that's what your parents wanted for you?
So growing up, my parents, they have always supported my art journey. So they put me to different art schools and they bought me a lot of art materials. But they've always told me that, that's just a hobby.
Yeah.
And when you get to college or when you enter university, it's the serious stuff. And so you have to put it aside. And so I grew up with that kind of mentality and I had that in my head. So when I went to university, I was very serious. I was really studying so hard, memorizing all those medical jargons and all. And then when I was in second year, that was a time when I realized when I felt that emptiness. There's this feeling that there's something wrong about what I'm doing. And I started to feel nostalgic every time I see people from the faculty or the fine arts college.
Yeah.
So when I see them doing their plates around the campus, I'd always feel like I have that soft feeling for them that, I could be doing that thing also. And then, but I've always thought, here in the Philippines, they always tell you that there's no money in art. And so you won't look at art as something that it could that can be a career, because you always look at art as a hobby. And so when I actually started out, the 2 years that I spent working or studying watercolor and drawing, those are thankless, hardworking, thankless. It was a thankless job, doing sketching every day, coloring, learning watercolor, and people were starting to pressure me to get a real job, and they were telling me that this stop indulging in those hobbies, and you get a real job and help your husband make money. But now the same people who were pressuring me about getting a job are the same people who are attending and supporting my art right now.
Wow. Talk about like turn of event, like total 180-degree shift. But during that time, during that time when you had these people, and I'm sure they meant well, right? They're more of course we support you, you're really good at what you do, but that's the common notion or misconception in the Philippines that probably anywhere, because I've had artists as well who had the same sentiments growing up, that it's just a hobby. What led you to push through with that passion and to continue to press on, to continue to study? You said yourself that it was a thankless job, studying, buying materials, continue creating. What was your catalyst to continue to press on with your passion, to carry on with your passion, Kyle?
I think it was that emptiness or that feeling that I felt when I was in nursing, at the nursing college. That feeling of being out of place and missing something. It started to grow inside, and it was turning into an unhappiness that I couldn't really describe, that was already seeping through my daily work. So, even my bosses at work before were telling me, you know what, you don't belong here. Because you know how it's like here in the Philippines during Christmas parties. So I would be involved in all those decorations and all those art-related projects. And then they'd always tell me, you know what, Kat, you belong somewhere else. And I see these people, and they see that potential in me. That made me realize that, you know, maybe I'm the only person who doesn't see it. Maybe I should start believing in myself more. Mm-hmm. So every time people tell me that, you know, there's no money in art, I'd always remember myself memorizing those MS Excel formulas and SQL codes. And, you know, and every time I remember myself doing that, I would always say that, you know, if I can put in the same effort that I'm putting here or pouring in this work in my art practice, then probably I'd make it in the art world.
And I'm glad that you made a shift. And now we are blessed with all of your beautiful works and sharing them with the world through your exhibits, through teaching as well. Now, before we dive into teaching, Kyle, so portraits. This is a very interesting subject. I say that because for a lot of people, it's always that frustration to draw faces. And there is the stigma that when you draw someone's face, it has to be perfect of some sort. It has to really mirror the measurements of the face, you know, how the dimensions, right? I remember back in high school, I attended an art class. It's more of an art club. And the very first thing that we learn is to draw a circle and then draw like a vertical line and then horizontal. That's where yes. And every time that I would try to draw faces, portraits, that would be my starting point. But I would always end up getting frustrated because I couldn't either. The eyes are way too big. The proportions are they're not good. So when you were starting out, and I guess it's because you've been doing this since, you know, as a kid, you've always been fascinated with portraits. But for someone who would like to start drawing faces, any tips or techniques that you can share to make it less intimidating?
My favorite subjects were the people in my house who are watching a television because they're still and they don't move a lot. So instead of looking at a television, I'm looking at them and I'm drawing. So faces, I think the measurements would come naturally and it would be easier for you to assemble the different parts of the face. I think it's best for you to start with the circle and all that. But if you don't draw from life, or if you don't draw from photographs in a freehand manner, then it would be very difficult for you to draw portraits, especially if you're not into it.
So you said that you're watching TV, and instead of looking at the faces of the people on the television, you look at the faces of the people that you're watching. But is that right, Kyle?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I catch that correctly. So that's your reference. Is that correct?
Yes, growing up. So ever since I was a child, I had my sketch pad. And I'd always wait for my family to watch those midnight dramas. And when they start sitting down together, I'd face them and then start drawing them. Because I think they're very still. So it's easier to draw people who are watching TV than those people that you ask to, sit there and don't do anything. But it's very difficult to ask a person or a model to do that for you, especially when you're young.
Yeah, but that's a really an interesting take for your reference. So that's your reference growing up. Speaking of drawing portraits, right? So I was looking at your works on your Instagram feed. And back in 2016, you have this certain colors that you use for portraits. So a little bit of pink, blue, and purple. And it's like a series of faces. I was like, it's so good. It's so beautiful to look at. And then slowly you shifted your colors to more warm. And then it's fascinating to watch your style evolve, even the choice of colors. Can you take me through that journey of how you transition from those uh, pastel colors, like vibrant colors, to warm tones, and then to the style and the choice of and your palette right now?
Okay. As I said a while ago, I wanted to be a watercolor comic book artist,
Yeah.
and the palette that I used was actually from the Prang. Remember
Your brand,
the
yes.
usually the
Yeah.
yeah the palette that kids get. So the colors there are very vibrant, very colorful, and because my reference that time was comic books,
Mhm.
they were very colorful. So I think I got my color palette from that reference, and also the art style, the one with so many hard edges. I got that from the comic book artist David Mack,
Okay.
who was actually the reason why I started watercolor. Then when I joined the Philippine Guild of Watercolorists, I met a lot of interesting portrait artists. They showed, I saw artists who would color outside the lines, which, when you're growing up, you
Yeah.
never color outside the line, and you get extra points for not doing so.
That's
And
true.
so these people, they have a very interesting process.
Mm.
So I started learning from different senior artists who have more experience with the medium.
Mhm.
And I actually just fell in love with the medium. So I started, instead of becoming a comic book artist, I became a watercolor painter. I learned how to paint flowers and other subjects. And, I just really fell in love with the medium. And I'm so excited to learn more about its properties and behavior.
That's also very interesting to hear you say that you are still learning. Because personally, when I look, and we talk about this offline, that I've been seeing your works like back in 2019, and your exhibits. I haven't been in any of your exhibits, but I did see on your feed on your Instagram that you've been doing a lot of exhibits. And when I was staring at your works, I was like, these are really good portraits, like realistic portraits. And you look so young to be making them, and like, huge pieces. And for any artist, right, that's some huge milestone to have your works displayed in a gallery. And you have done several of them. Oh, actually, a lot of exhibits. Take me through that. How did you? Because for most artists, right, it's calling yourself as an artist, acknowledging that you are an artist. That's one. For a lot of people, it's, you find, do I really want to wear that artist hat? Do I really want to call myself as an artist? The second is showing your work. I know you said earlier that you started showing your works online, like on social media, and that takes courage. But to be able to showcase your works in a gallery, of course it's exciting, but at the same time, can you share with me how the process of getting to that point wherein you have been tapped by a gallery or museum to showcase your works?
Started with joining the Philippine Guild of Watercolorists. So the guild has connections to different galleries. So I started with joining the group shows.
Mhm.
And in these group shows, I met other artists, some gallery owners, and some buyers.
Mm.
And these people would invite me to their galleries, and some of the artists would invite me to their exhibits.
Mhm.
So it was just really through and it helped. It helped a lot that I have different clients in portrait commissions. There was this client who just messaged me online, and then after I gave the paintings to her, she contacted me and invited me to a gallery show in a hotel. So when I was there, I introduced myself to her, and then what happened was she just introduced me to the curator and the hotel manager, and now they're booking me for a solo exhibit in the hotel next year. So
Wow.
it's really just about your network. Their skills will get you to these people, but it is these your network or these people that would like magnify your reach.
That's a really good point. Would you say that the community did help with that process? Because you talk about network, and initially you said that it's the Philippine Guild of Watercolor, is that right? That you joined. That's where it all started. That's where you started to build this network of artists, buyers, and curators, and that's really started this whole journey of showcasing your works in a gallery. For anyone who would like to start showcasing, or have any plans of showing their works, maybe online, probably on social media, and then eventually through a gallery and an exhibit, what would you say is your biggest takeaway from that experience that you can share with someone who would like to go through the same path?
When I was starting, I was actually very scared to show my first works online because they're not perfect and they're not that beautiful compared to other artists. But I think it's about showing your journey also, like from your early paintings. Like people notice that, people see that, and they see their potential through the progress. I think it's okay for you to post works that are not perfect. It's also good. It's also a good idea for you to show your process online, because sometimes people just show like artworks on their Instagram, but sometimes according to the curators and art gallery owners that I've met, they like seeing the process of the artist, like knowing about the story behind the artist. So it's actually good for you to also show your studio, show your process, show your struggles as an artist, because that's how the curators and gallery owners would know the artist. Because when you put your artwork online, the common mentality or the usual thinking is that the only people who see your work are actually your followers. But actually, there are a lot of gallery owners and curators who are looking at emerging artists.
That is a very encouraging piece of advice, Kyle, to showcase your work and show your process. I think people nowadays are very much interested to see the behind the scenes, because normally when you watch YouTube, right, and you see an artist sharing their say tutorial, but sometimes it's time lapsed, and so you get to see the final product and you start to think, how did she get to that point? But seeing the glimpse of the process will allow you to have a better understanding of the journey that artist has to take in order to get to that point. And you also highlighted this in one of your posts, that learning watercolor doesn't happen overnight, and it takes practice. And I think when I read that is absolutely true, because for someone who's looking on to your works, right, without checking some of your clips showing your process, I would say that, oh my, I would never get to that point. I would never reach that point, level of expertise, of talent, of artistry, of doing portraits, same as Kyle. But what's interesting about what you said is that it takes practice, and looking at your journey, how you evolve, your style even, and you mentioning that you are still learning. It's just inspiring to hear that. And for someone who's starting out, that it's never ending. You continue to grow and learn as an artist, whether if you want to do that as a hobby, or if you want to push follow a path that will lead you to a career in art rather, then it's a continuous learning process. Now let's talk about teaching. And I know that there was someone who posted a question on your Instagram asking when you will be teaching, and I think that was way back in 2020. So you have done a live demo with us. And like what I said earlier, people are always fascinated to draw faces because it's a little bit intimidating. But I know with the techniques that you shared in your live demo, you are making it less intimidating for students and for anyone who would like to start out portraits. You will have, so this is for anyone who's listening to this podcast, so this is airing on a Monday, April 11th, and Kyle here is doing her mini workshop on Friday. That is 7 p.m. Eastern time. Is that right? So the 7 p.m. Thursday, April 7, and that's April 8, 7 a.m. Philippine time, Singapore time.
Yes.
I'm trying to be here with time zone. Let's talk about your mini workshop. What will you be showcasing and teaching our students for your mini workshop? If you have a sample that you can show us, Kyle, that would be great as well.
For the mini workshop, I would teach more about edge control because it is something that you need to learn or master when you're dealing with watercolor, because watercolor is really about timing and learning the behavior of your paper and your brushes. So edge control is very important because watercolor is transparent, and as I said a while ago, you actually paint outside the lines. So if you don't have that in your list of skills, it would be very difficult to show the behavior of water in watercolor. And I would be teaching about mixing skin tones. Right. So in my YouTube live demo, I talked about the different colors that go into the mixing of the skin tones for different race. For my 90-minute class, I would teach the students how to apply those colors and in different layers in doing portraits. I would be teaching that step by step because I'm also a person who didn't go to art school. So I know how it feels like to start from scratch. So I would teach that step by step in my class.
That's really good to hear because a lot of our students and those who subscribe to Etcher Studio, they love it when the artists have this beginner mindset. When they have a beginner mindset, because that will allow the artist to break down their process step by step because they're putting themselves in the student's shoes. And so it's easier for them to break down the process and for the students to really understand what those step-by-step process or steps are. I like that you started in your mini workshop, those colors that you need to mix, because yes, you're absolutely right with skin tone. I personally would start with either just flesh, and if it wanted dark, and if it's a little bit darker, then I would less water. So I haven't really tried like mixing other colors in order to, or sometimes I would use brown and then maybe mix, I don't know, white, just to make, skin tone. But in your class, in your live demo, you showed like the different colors that you can use in order to create skin tone. And then for the mini workshop, a step-by-step process and how to apply those colors in order to achieve skin tone in your portraits. That is a very interesting and exciting class. It's happening on the 8th of April for those who are in Asia. And if you are in the US, it's April 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think I'm going to subscribe to that because I would really love to learn how to, because it's always a struggle, especially for skin.
Yes.
Okay. So do you do any other classes? So the one that you'll be having for Etcher that's happening this Friday, but you also do on-site because, during the pandemic, everyone shifted online. Have you done any teaching during the pandemic, at the height or at the peak of the pandemic?
In 2020, I think I did, it was just a live demo. It wasn't really a class. It was just a live demo showing me painting a portrait for baby mama. Mm-hmm. And then after that, this year, I joined the 30 Faces watercolor challenge of Sketchy. So I have 4 classes in Sketchy, and I also did a class just a couple of weeks ago. I think 2 weeks ago, I did a class for the Philippine Guild of Watercolorists. It was also a portrait class, but it's more about how to put shadows on the face.
Wow, that's another interesting technique of shadows. This is always a struggle. Probably for another class with you, Kyle, for you to teach that. Okay, during the pandemic, I saw this as well in one of your posts that kind of resonated with me because a lot of people felt very isolated at the time of the pandemic. And for a lot of people, they resorted into making art. What are your pieces of advice or golden nuggets for someone who's still feeling a bit lost or still feeling a bit isolated, but also very much interested to try on new things, whether it's painting, dancing, or any form of art? What sort of advice that you can share with that someone, or for anyone who's listening who might be in that state?
I think it's about mindset.
Mm.
Because actually, with respect to people who struggled during the pandemic, my art actually flourished during the pandemic because I had more time and less distraction during the lockdown. So I think it's about your mindset or how you see the situation. Because for me, I saw that as an opportunity to actually learn more,
Right.
and be more with my craft. So if you're one of those people who feel isolated, you can use some change of mindset or change in your mindset, because don't look at it as a bad thing or a tragedy to be stuck at home. It could be the rest or the isolation that you've been waiting for you to start something new or to start a craft or delve or dive deeper into your craft. Because it was only during the pandemic when I was able to study more, since also people were just at home, more clients for portrait commissions. And since also everything was done online, I was invited to teach online, which is I've always wanted to teach and get into a class of watercolorists. And all these things happened actually when we were in lockdown.
Mm-mm.
So I think you need to take advantage of the things that are present, or the things that you have. So like, for example, if you have more time now at home, then I think you need to use that time to learn something new, or to study more about your craft.
Love it. Very well said, Kyle. And I asked that because you also mentioned 3 things in one of your posts, and that I felt that for anyone who would might be feeling stuck or would like to start something new but kind of scared to do that, you said paint what's on your mind, dance with your feelings, and sing your heart out. I kept repeating those lines in my head prior to the interview because those are really, those are simple lines if you think about it, but they are very inspiring and very encouraging and free, liberating as well, to just paint what's on your mind. You don't have to have, like what you said, you want to teach from a perspective of someone who didn't have any art background. And dance with your feelings, paint what you're feeling, whatever that is, and sing your heart out. So Kyle, it's been a pleasure having you on. Like what I said, I'm a huge fan of your works. Even prior to joining Etcher, I've been seeing your works, and I love how you are able to showcase the emotions of people through their portraits. What you mentioned earlier that it's easier for you to draw faces not by just someone who's very still and poised, but for someone who's very relaxed, just like I said, watching TV, your family members, and it shows in your work. So I hope that you will continue to inspire us with your art through your exhibits, and especially through your classes, the one that you'll be having with us with Etcher. Thanks for agreeing to do that with us. And that is happening again on April 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will include the details on the show notes. That's going to be recorded by the time that you listen to this episode, but you can definitely check that out. And you can follow Kyle _ the artist. Is that right for your Instagram?
Yes.
I will also include that on the description box for our YouTube channel, as well as on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Kyle, it's been a pleasure having you on. I learned so much, and I feel like, wow, finally I get to interview someone that I looked up to when it comes to portraits. So thank you for taking the time to share this space with me and to share your journey as an artist.
Thank you also, Jessie.
I am certainly trying out the techniques shared by Kyle, and who knows, maybe I can finally correct my proportions this time. What about you? Have you also tried drawing faces? Care to switch notes? Do let us know through the blog post associated with this podcast at etcherlab.com/Kyle. We would love to hear your thoughts, so please drop us a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast, or you can find us on YouTube at Etcher Studio. And hitting the subscribe button is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you again next time. Until then, let's make more art.